Welcome to Heal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Hey guys, real quick, before we jump into the episode, I need you to do the 3 S's for me. What is that? First of all, I need you to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss an episode of our podcast. Number 2, I need you to share it with your family and friends. Don't keep it to yourself, share it with someone else. Lastly, I need you to say something. Leave us a comment. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want to see from us, what you like, what you don't like. We are open to your suggestions. We want to know everything that you want to let us know about the podcast. All right. Now, get back to the episode. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to our podcast on all of your social media listening platforms, or should I say all of your podcast listening platforms. And also make sure that you check us out on all of our social media platforms, including our YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. Make sure you guys go to YouTube to check out the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network, where you will not only find the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, but you will also find our partner podcast, which is the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, both which are available, as well as some other podcasts on the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network channel on YouTube. So make sure that you guys go there and check that out. Also, our product of the week. As you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and the way that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products for you to purchase. So our product of the week is our purpose journal and our purpose planner, because I believe that we are to journal in order to keep track of where we've been and where we are, as well as plan for our future. So you guys can get your copy of the Purpose Journal and the Purpose Planner on Amazon. The links are in the description under this episode. Also, there's other great information in the descriptions as well. Make sure you guys go check out the descriptions, check out that information about my guests, first of all, and also about other programs and things that we have to offer with the Deal to Heal platform. So make sure you guys are checking all of those things out. But today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Miss Anu. How you doing?
Hey, great to be here, Ernest. It's such a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes. So first of all, let me say thank you for being here, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. So we're going to jump right into this thing. Do me a favor, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Hi all. So my name's Anu, and I'm the founder of Victim to Victor, which is my brand that I've developed on the back end of my book, which was published in 2020. And I've also, like yourself, I've got a podcast of the same name. And my whole brand, it's all about healing from childhood trauma and toxic relationships to then regain self-worth and self-love so that you can go on and have more fruitful relationships with both yourself and others. Yeah. And it's just, obviously a very healing platform. And there's so much that is going on right now with it as well, because we're in the process of writing a script to develop a movie about it as well. Yeah, so that's really exciting. And I just feel like there's so much we can do in life, and I'm here to obviously make the most of that.
Right. Okay, great. So let's kind of go back a little bit, because I always know that there's a story before the story. There's our story before we get into the story that we're doing now. And so, what was your experience? Like, who was the early and new, and what was that experience that kind of happened that made you even aware of the victim to trauma and all of those things? And then what was your healing point that made you say, okay, now I'm going to spend my life helping other people?
Wow. Yeah. So, well, my trauma started when I was just 3, and it did continue for quite some time. And then when I hit like a legal age, a lot of 18, then I was quite reckless, and I was
Mm,
disrespecting my body. I had zero self-esteem.
yeah.
And obviously at the time, people just thought I was crazy, and so what I would do is numb the pain with, taking drugs, drinking loads of alcohol, having reckless sexual interactions, just, basically living a life where I actually didn't care if I was dead or alive. And
Mhm.
you mentioned suicide earlier, and yeah, I had many attempts to end my life by jumping off buildings and overdosing on drugs, and I'd end up in A&E or casualty, and again, I'd literally just come out of whatever coma I was in, and just be really blasé about it. And the nurses and doctors were like, hello, you nearly died. I'm like, oh
Mm,
well, I'm alive. I was just like, whatever. Who cares if I'm alive or dead? I'm probably
mm,
better off dead right now. But that's how low I felt about myself. And so that continued throughout my adult years, where I was attracted, because of how low I felt about myself, I was attracting equally as low partners into my life, who were then abusing me even more, making me feel even more worse than I already was. And then it was only really after probably my fifth toxic relationship where I mean, I remember this turning point clearly, which is why my movie will be named based on this turning point, and it's my movie is going to be based called Silent Screens. And it was when one night I woke up in the middle of the night, and it was because my soul was just screaming, like it felt like there were witches or spirits screaming, and I just got woken up. It was just such a traumatizing experience because it was my soul crying.
mm,
And then I remember I just thought, oh my God, I can't continue like this. And I was just crying so much. I've never cried so much. And then at that point, I realized I had to leave the city that I was in because it just wasn't good for me. It was actually
yeah.
Manchester. And so I left everything to move back home with my parents. Well, I didn't actually move back in. I decided to go traveling, and it was my second traveling adventure, where I just basically just traveled so much that I got burnt out. But then, see, this was it. I mean, I never realized at the time, but obviously there's a freeze, flight, um, and fawn responses in there,
Mhm.
and fight as well. And so I was either freezing, or I was like flighting away. I was actually running away from my issues, and that's exactly what traveling allowed me to do, was just to run away from my issues. But then I went to some real spiritual places, which then enabled me to sit in silence in a monastery, which was very tough at the time. But it was just in those moments when I was actually able to sit in silence that I realized that my life needed to change. And so it was a bit of an awakening moment, really. And then when I came home, I decided to find a therapist who could really help me to heal. And then that was literally in my early 30s. And ever since then, I was just uncovering a lot of the trauma that I'd gone through, and realized that it was trauma that I'd buried deep inside of me to protect me, because we do, don't we, as children,
Right.
when
Yeah.
there's issues, then we'll just bury them. But then they were all coming out. And it was just as they were coming out, I just felt so much freer, because it's heavy carrying all that trauma. And so by feeling free, I was then able to pursue, happiness finally, and actually, find people who resonated with me, and that's basically how my life started to improve.
Oh man, that's amazing. And I like several things about your story. One of them what you just mentioned is about, going to therapy. I'm definitely one who supports going to therapy and seeing a counselor or someone, who you can talk to. Definitely dealing with my own depression, at the time that I was dealing with it after the passing of my mom, and going to bereavement support myself. And that really helped me, during that time period. And so I haven't been to a therapist, yet. I do plan to go because I think we all should go, and I know growing up, it was like, oh, go see a counselor, you're crazy. I'm like, I think all of us is a little crazy. You know what I mean? And especially in this world that we live in now, and anyone that made it through COVID, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyone that made it through COVID got some issues that they need to talk about, even though we probably don't, think that is has affected us. But, especially doing this work that we do, and we realize how much things affect us that we don't really recognize sometimes. So I am a big component of therapy, and going to see a therapist. But I want to go back. I want to go back to something that you mentioned, and you mentioned about, your trauma, probably not causing, but definitely adding to, who you chose as partners, because that trauma kind of connected. Um, and I can even, you know, uh, share or kind of relate, should I say, to that. Those who follow me on the podcast know about my, connection with fatherless daughters, and I was talking to you a little bit before we started recording, that when I recognized my connection to fatherless daughters and started doing the work on myself, I realized that even me was dealing with some rejection issues that I had kind of, pushed back as a child, which was part of the reason why I connected to fatherless daughters. That part of me that was dealing with rejection, also connected with the part of them that was dealing with rejection. And so, as we were mentioning that, what are some of the other, some of the ways, should I say, that shows up even in our lives, even when we don't even know that it's there?
Wow. Yeah, I think relationships and your choice of partners is a huge sign there, and it was for me because I was never ever drawn to people who were safe or normal.
Mhm.
And when there was a good person who came to me, I would literally just be repulsed by that, because my body wasn't used to that, because my nervous system was so dysregulated that I needed a spark. I needed chemistry, attraction,
Mhm.
fatal attraction. I needed like the odd people. So it was just natural that I would go for the people who would take drugs and who would overdrink alcohol and who were just crazy, because it felt like home. It felt
Mhm.
familiar.
Mhm.
And that's something which is so common for any trauma survivor. And it's, now I because I'm now on the other side of it, I
Right.
noticed that with a lot of my clients. They've got so much drama in their relationships, and there's so much fighting. And that what they'll do is they'll go and get drunk, and then that they'll fight, and then they'll make up, and get close again. And it's just like it's just crazy. Like there's zero stability. And so that's when I started to understand that, okay, so chemistry and compatibility are two totally different things. So chemistry is basically your nervous system recognizing the familiar, not the good, whereas
Mhm.
compatibility is where you align with somebody based on shared values and shared beliefs, and just shared characteristics or traits even. So, and compatibility with somebody, that's safe love. That's what stability feels like. Whereas chemistry isn't really. It's great to have chemistry when you meet somebody, but then a lot of the times past the 6 month mark, will that even last? It only
Mhm.
lasts if you're compatible with somebody. And so I think that's the difference. And back in the day, healthy love just felt really boring for me,
Yeah.
because yeah, whereas now that's all I need. Just give me
Right.
healthy love. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
And that,
it's
yeah, and
simple.
that definitely, I can relate to that. Dating, different people, over my lifetime, and you meet the ones who come from chaotic backgrounds, and it's like if it's not chaotic, it's like something's wrong. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like I need some kind of drama, and they look for that, and not necessarily even always to a bad side, sometimes even on the good side. So I come from a large family. I have 8 siblings, right? And
Wow.
so it's 9 of us, and that's not even including like cousins and everybody else that's was always around, at our house. So I grew up in an environment where there always was a lot of family, a lot of people around. And so when I got married, my wife was the only child. And so when we got married and we, moved into our first apartment together and everything, it was so quiet that I was just like, oh my God, like what is going on? Like there's nobody here. I was 25 when I got married. So it was like 25 years of always having a lot of people around. And now I'm 25 and it's just like two people. You know what I mean? And then if my wife is at work, then it's just me. And I'm just in the house, like, you know what I mean? And so
Oh,
even on the other side is that, it's like we recognize how we grew up and what we feel as normal, starts to reflect in, sort of the choices that we make and even those environments that we look for, because it's like, okay, I got to look for that space where I'm comfortable at, and so we reflect back to, where we was born and the environment that we grew up in. It's like, okay, that's my normal. So I'm looking for that even as an adult, and like you said, until you start paying attention to that and be like, you know what, I need something different. Like my soul needs something different. Then we find ourselves, just again going through those cycles and keeping that going. Um, I wanna go back to one of the things, because we're kind of talking about this, the environment, but just in childhood, childhood traumas that we have anyway, how does that kind of play into the choices that we make as adults? Because I know that definitely it affects us, because we can even think about things that happen in our lives, and I'm going to be 50 soon, but I definitely can look back even at some of the earliest things that happened to me, in my life and be like, yeah, that particular thing made a impact on me, even at the age that I was. And so how does even trauma at a young age kind of informs our decisions as we move forward and even play it in our habits?
yeah. So, well, the big one that I talk about all the time, it's people pleasing behaviors.
Mm,
So, people pleasing, as we know, is a survival strategy. It's not actually a personality trait. And so, as children, especially unfortunately, if we were abused, then we learnt that, being easy, agreeable with our perpetrator, or
mm,
even invisible, it actually kept us safe. And so, what happens is that's learned behavior. We will literally model how we were as children, as adults. And so as we do get older, it kind of disconnects us from our own needs, and it makes intimacy also feel quite threatening as well, because then what we're doing is we just want to please our partners rather than looking at our own needs, which is why it's so difficult for any trauma survivor really to be fully present when they're intimate with their partner. And there's so few people who even experience orgasms until they've actually healed. And so that's a big one. And also another one, especially for me, was over independence. So that's
mm,
basically trauma disguised as strength, not real strength, because
yeah,
again, we're over independent because it's a coping mechanism, because there was nobody there for us as children. And so what we learned was that the only way that to survive is to actually just rely on ourselves.
yeah,
And so this will then create relationships where we will never actually fully let people in, because we'll just be over independent. And it's what creates a lot of masculinity in females as well. And you'll find that a lot of female survivors do actually portray a lot more masculinity compared to
mm,
femininity. And because obviously we know that femininity is strength. And so it's only by healing really that you're able to then trust yourself and trust others. And then that's what creates femininity. It's being vulnerable, it's allowing people to into your space. So I think those two are the big ones. And again, dependent on what trauma the child experienced, there can also be self abandonment as well, which happens,
yeah,
yeah, when we fear when we fear being neglected or abandoned from others. And so that actually creates silence, because then, when we're abandoned, then we don't want to really communicate our needs, because again, we fear that we won't be liked by others. And so we let go of any boundaries that we may have as well. And then we'll stay small because we want to avoid any conflict or rejection. But this just creates relationships where we just disappear. Like we
Yeah.
may as well not be there. So,
Yeah.
so I think
And
that those are the three things.
yeah, and I found even in my experience, and definitely even after studying more and reading up on different things, it's like that. It's almost a twofold with the you got the people pleasing on one hand, and then you got like abandonment and even self sabotage on the other hand. So it's like it's the two extremes. Like you go either where you're like super needy, almost and clingy, and so you get into the people pleasing, or you go the opposite where you become strong and independent. And then even if you are in a good relationship, because of those, that fear of abandonment, is like, all right, I think this person's going to leave anyway. So let me be the first one to go, or let me, do something. At least I can say I controlled the reason why they left, and it wasn't that they just left me, and I've kind of found that, that has played out in different scenarios of people that I know and have talked to, that, even that, like I said, that self sabotage, I think is a big one. So if you can give us just some little more information, even from your viewpoint on that part of it, and even some tips to kind of help our audience kind of deal with that, because I think, at least in my experience, that one is a big one that has played out even in my life, and some of the relationships that I've had in the past. Was like, for me, I'm like, oh man, everything's great. And then for them, it's like, it's almost too good. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I don't trust this. Things is going too well. You know what I mean? Let me get out,
Oh my God, absolutely. Yes, self-sabotage. Yes. And it's funny because I do use that word all the time. And it's right, because again, we're not used to everything going amazingly. We're used to danger. We're used to the unfamiliarity. We're used to the variety. So if there's any stability in our life, we want to erupt it somehow. And it's just because of our nervous system, because that's what our nervous system needs. It's like, feed
Right.
me, god damn it. And so the way to override self-sabotage and any of these other self-abandonment, people pleasing, over independence, it is to learn grounding techniques. So we want to try and be present. It's hard to be present because a lot of the times we'll be stuck in the past or we'll be anxious about the future. But it's just, sitting on our seat, for example, and just taking in what's around us, like feeling your seat, feeling your feet on the ground, feeling your bum on the chair, and just smelling the atmosphere, which is quite hard to do because it's hard to use our senses when we're traumatized, and which is why people find that they don't really have much taste for foods, or the smell senses go. And so it is about learning to be present. And even when it comes to your relationships with others, micro boundaries, I talk about that all the time. So rebuilding micro boundaries is when we're not so quick to respond to people, especially if we're being asked to do something, rather than saying, of course I will, because we
Yeah.
want them to, we want to please them. It's a bit like maybe messaging saying, I just need a moment, or I need time to think about this.
Yeah.
So it's about not giving away your power and control so easily, and just really respecting your own needs and your own boundaries. And it's just to also trust yourself, learning that your needs, they're not burdens. We all
Right.
have needs, and we have to really understand our needs. And I've actually done a lot of needs work with Tony Robbins, because he's very much about the 7 human needs, and I absolutely love that. So his 7 human needs are like love and connection, variety, significance, and certainty. and contribution is a big one as well. And so it's just learning them, learning what are the top two needs that fulfill you right now. And it's interesting because as you heal, you'll find that that changes. And so
Mm.
I guess it's about, yeah, becoming aware of that as well, becoming aware of your needs and becoming aware of your own, value system and your beliefs. It's such important work that I feel everyone needs to do, especially if you're out trying to build relationships, or, if
Mhm.
you're out dating, trying to find, your match, or even in your career, just learning about yourself is just vital for everyone. And and it's what differentiates the awakened soul to those who are still asleep right now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that you mentioned about, even getting to know yourself, and I definitely think, you mentioned Tony Robbins, and he's very big in the personal development space, and I have followed some of his teachings, and also Dr. Eric Thomas, who I follow as well. But that personal development has, even in my life, the last couple of years, I've really kind of really dived into it, and getting to know yourself. And I think everyone should go through that and start looking into, professional, personal development, and really getting to know who they are on the inside, even if you don't have trauma, because I think we come into this world and we have an idea of what we want to do and how we want to be, and then as we grow and have different experiences through our environments and through schooling and things of that nature, we are kind of molded into someone else, you know what I
Mm,
mean? And so I think that when we start doing that personal development and really getting to know who we are as a person individually, then we
mm.
really can reconnect with, that person that we wanted to be when we came into this world, and not necessarily the person that we became, just by trial and error, should I say.
True, yeah, you're right. Yeah, because we become conditioned to be a certain way, and it's due to our environmental factors and social conditioning, and even the schooling system. We're taught to
Mhm.
be
Yeah.
quiet and not to talk to our peers, and so it just makes you think: is that really a great environment to be growing up in? Where we're told to be silent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Just a lot of things, and school is a whole nother thing we can,
episode.
but I want to talk about, excuse me, because you mentioned a little bit about it. So with the work that you do, and with your experience and the work that you've done for yourself, but now the work that you do, with others, how do you kind of help them to rebuild, emotionally, trying to get off the trauma, and really deal from the inside out, the things that, may have found identity in, from some of their traumas, but now going through that again, we talked about personal development. So going through those things and saying, okay, let's work these things out. So how do you kind of help them work through some of those things that they may have, some of the traumas they may be living with, and that didn't even notice it sometimes?
Absolutely. So first of all, it is that awareness, like you said, it's
Mhm.
understanding your whole timeline of events of from when you were born to now, and just understanding, what kind of events have you been through, and did they have an impact on your emotional well-being and your mental health. And so but that's the first thing that I start with is a timeline. And what we'll do is we'll recognize all the negative events and then all the positive events as well, because we always want to understand the positive events in your life as well. And so for anybody who has more negative than positive, and if there were really traumatizing events, then we will have to go through a process of safety stabilization, making sure that
Mhm.
they're safe, make sure that they feel safe in their body, because healing begins in the body. I mean,
Yeah.
there's we can do mind work, or we can do CBT and counseling and all these other techniques, but I mean, we all know that the body stores the trauma, the body keeps the score. And the first bit of work that I need to do with my clients after we've done some safety stabilization work is emotional regulation. And that's quite a long process, because we're going to be looking at their relationships, we're going to be looking at the boundaries that they have, we're going to be looking at the trust that they have for themselves and others. And so all of that is going to then help them to really stabilize within their nervous system, because it's a nervous system that holds emotional memory long before the mind has language for it. And so we can actually know that we're safe logically, but we can still feel terror and anxiety, and our body can still shut down. So it's really understanding your body and trying to release the trauma from the body. And so there's a lot of somatic tools that I like to use, as well as all the gratitude and affirmations that I love doing, because the words that we say to ourselves are just as important, because so many of us, we'll look in the mirror and the first thing we'll notice are the bad things about us. Whereas no, we want to notice the good things about us. Let's look at what's so beautiful about us first, and then you can start criticizing your body. so positive self-talk is so vital, and that really helped me through my journey. I tell you what really helped, which I don't know if anybody does this, but it's like every kind of few hours I'll have like a reminder set on my phone, just giving me some affirmations that I actually believe, like, that I am enough, I am loved, I can achieve anything I want to, and the world is my oyster, and I have the best relationships. But the thing is, you have to believe your affirmations. And I know there's a lot of mind work going on at the moment with Mind Valley, and they're basically teaching people to ask yourself questions, so wake up in the morning and ask yourself, why am I so healthy? And then, you answer that. So I guess the questions are good for people who don't really believe that they're good enough right now. So, but then obviously when you're at that stage, then affirmations are great. And other just real easy somatic tools that people can do is just, put your hand on the heart and just breathe in for the count of 3 and exhale for the count of 5. Because the reason I say that is because when we exhale, it then helps to regulate our parasympathetic nervous system. And that's the nervous system that we really want to try and regulate, because that's the one that helps us to relax and be calm. So just, exhale longer than you inhale, and anchoring in the present, just moving your body, like rebounding's a great one that I learned again at Tony Robbins, where you're like jumping up and down on the trampoline. And just things like even going outside in my garden and just grounding myself by taking my socks and shoes off, and just standing on the grass, because when we connect with nature, that's really healing, and it just sends, so many beautiful vibrations through our body, which can really help us to be grounded as well. And so, I mean, obviously it's winter here now, but I don't know how much I'll be doing that in the winter.
But I think that's good. And I actually I was on a podcast yesterday, and I was the guest. And so one of the questions was asked, how do I kind of keep my mental health? What are some of the things that I do? And I was mentioning that I got into hiking, and I started hiking, and that's one of my things, like to be out in nature. And I talked about the grounding and taking your shoes off, and hug a tree. You know what I mean? Just like really getting away, because I live in a big city in Chicago, and so to be able to get away and get back to nature and be surrounded by nature, and just kind of reconnect our senses with our primal self, like our original being. We weren't born, this world wasn't created with the buildings and the cars, and it was just trees and animals. And so really being able to reconnect with those spaces, I think definitely helps people, get grounded and kind of reconnect with themselves on a different level. So I know it works for me. I love it. I want to talk about before we get out of here, because you do a lot of things. We mentioned you got the podcast, you got the book, you got your courses that you teach. Let's go into each of those and kind of find out a little bit more. And we'll start with the book first, because I think that's probably was what came first. I mean, the chicken or the egg. I don't know which one, the book or the podcast. But so let's start with the book. Tell us a little bit about the book itself, and what do you want the readers to walk away with after they read it?
Wow. Yeah. So my book is actually, it's a 4-part book. So it starts with my memoir, which is my life journey. And that all came about from when I started journaling. Journaling was a huge it was such a healing tool for me, because it just enabled me to make logic of a lot of the events that had occurred, because they were just so mumbled and jumbled in my head. And then as I started writing them down, they started to make more sense, and I could actually put logic to it and understand them and the impact that they made on my life. And which is why, like, on my book, like most of the people who read it actually enjoyed reading my memoir more so than the rest of the book, because because the rest of the book is more kind of educational there. So I go into what trauma and PTSD is, just to help people understand it. And then I also go onto the techniques, the healing techniques that really helped me, that I also was trained in and certified in. And then it ends with what decisions are you going to make. So it's a bit like a memoir stroke self-help book. And so it's Victim to Victor with the number 2, and it's available from Amazon worldwide. So
Yes. So so make sure you guys, to my listeners, the link is going to be in the description, so we're easy for you to find. When you get done listening, you can just scroll up and hit that button to order your copy of the book. And so the book came, and then we started the podcast. And so, how long have you been podcasting? And how has that journey been?
Yeah, so after I wrote my book, I realized that I was still heavily suppressed. Like, I still couldn't talk about the stuff that had happened to me. And it was only by when a fellow podcaster recommended that I start a podcast, because it would really help me. And I started to talk about stuff. I started to talk about some real important topics of just issues that I wanted to express my views on. And so the first kind of 40 odd episodes were just of me just recording, just self podcasts basically. And then I started getting contacted by people who wanted to come and join me on my podcast. And so that's when I started to then reach out and find some real cool guests to come on and share their insights and share their areas of expertise and how they could help people to heal. So it's been a bit of an evolution, to be honest, in my podcast. But it's been great. Now, I can talk about everything, and it's just like normalized topic of discussion for me now, where I don't get triggered anymore. And again, that's healing in itself as well.
Yeah, and that's a lot of our journeys kind of start that way, because even my journey to get into podcasting was the same thing. Like I said, I realized my connection with fatherless daughters, and I started an Instagram page called Friends to Fatherless Daughters, and I would just go on and kind of give my thoughts on ways that could help fatherless daughters. And I got contacted to be on a podcast, and end up doing like 7 podcasts, and had a conversation with one of the hosts, and they was like, I think you should have your own podcast. And so 200 and some episodes later, here we are. So I think that's a lot of times that's all of our journey, is we have a message, and it's like, hey, come share your message here. And then once we start sharing it, it's like, what? I think I got something, and I think not only do I want to share, my message and my viewpoints, but I want to hear other people too, and especially people that have a heart to help others. And so, we're not just telling our story just to tell it, but we're telling it because we believe that it can be a help to other people. And so, that's the premise of this whole podcast, the Deal to Heal, just bringing on other people to share their stories about, the things that they've been through. Because I would say I haven't been through everything, and I don't want to go through everything. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I don't want to go through that. You did it, so you experienced it for me. I know growing up, that was one of the things that my parents would say. Like, I made certain mistakes, so you don't have to. You know what I mean? Like, I've already did it, so you don't have to go do that. Learn from my mistakes, or learn from my experiences. And so that's what I like to do. I like to bring on other people on, who my audience and myself can learn through your experiences, like things that happen, and how to deal with those things. And so that's what we do. Lastly, I want to talk about your program, because you have a program. So what I can say, we have the book, we got the podcast, and then we have the program, the coaching program, that kind of help help your clients kind of walk through their trauma. So tell us a little bit about the program.
Yeah, so I have a coaching program which I designed based upon the best modalities and techniques that really help me. And so it's a very comprehensive program. It's a 120-page program. So but we can, like, we do get through it within the 3-month period, because it is a 3-month program. And so it is based around healing from a lot of the childhood trauma or even toxic relationships that people may have undergone, and to then be able to find love. Finding love, it comes from finding love within yourself first, and then from that you can build healthy relationships. And so that's what I've always believed is, unless we love ourselves, then how can we expect anyone to love us?
Yeah.
And so on that, I mean, I do have a like a free tool which people can go on to. It's called the Chemistry Trap Tool, which helps you to spot repeating patterns in your relationships, because just noticing patterns is the first step. Awareness is always the first step to breaking free from the cycles that don't actually serve you. And so again, we can drop the link to that. It's the Chemistry Trap Tool, diagnostic tool. And so, yeah, definitely have a go at that and see if, coaching is something that would actually benefit you.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Definitely, I like that the thing you mentioned about finding love and getting to know yourself first and fall in love with yourself first. Then it makes it easier to find that love that you're looking for. And I think that's a whole nother conversation we can have about the dating in this area, because I think a lot of people, like, they don't know what they actually want. They don't never really taken out the time to get to know themselves, and so they find they get their definition of what's a good relationship and what they want from outside sources. And I'm like, you can't find love for yourself from someone from outside of you. Like, you have to define that. But I don't think a lot of people have taken out the time to really define, and that's how you get people that ask for something like, I want this type of person, and then don't even know what to do with that type of person. Because
Exactly.
you just heard someone else say it. I'm like, oh, it sounds good. Like, no, but that's not what you need. And it's not even the kind of person that connects with you. But relationships is a whole other thing. We're not even going to go down that road. But but I thank you so much for being on, and the work that you do. I want you to have the last word, and I want you to leave us with a word of advice or motivation, however you feel, and also leave us with your social media handles and things of that nature, so we know where to find you. And so I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that. To my audience, to my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Make sure that you guys are checking us out on our website, the dealhealfulfill.org website. And we will be getting a makeover soon on that website, but right now I believe it's still up and running. But the dealhealfulfill.org, well, you can find out more information about the things that we have going on um, as an organization. Also, make sure you guys go to ernestjamesspeakslife.com. Again, that's ernestjamesspeakslife.com, for you can find out more information about myself, to have me to come out to be a speaker or facilitate a workshop for your organization or your school. You guys can go there in order to find out more information about that, and even see some of the work that I've done in the past. So that's ernestjamesspeakslife.com. Make sure you guys go there and check that out. Also, ebooks. I've written several ebooks, and you can find them at ebooksbyejames.com. One of them that I'm very proud of, that's doing very well right now, is the ebook Forgiving Me, the 4-step guide to self-forgiveness. You can find all of my ebooks at ebooksbyejames.com. And also, you can also sign up to be an affiliate of the ebooks and earn 50% of the purchase that someone makes when someone orders using your special link. So again, that's ebooksbyejames.com. Make sure you guys go and check that out. Also, our inspirational t-shirt line, which is deal2healtees.com. Again, that's deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. Make sure you guys go there to check out our inspirational tees, which includes our podcast merch t-shirts, right? Which is our podcast t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. There's one for the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, as well as one for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. So make sure you guys go there to check that out. Last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And one of the things that we do, we have free virtual workshops bi-monthly, talking about forgiveness, what it means to forgive, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, and just how much forgiveness plays in our lives on a day-to-day basis, and how much walking in forgiveness and living in forgiveness can help change our lives and our world as a whole. So you guys can sign up for our free virtual workshops at forgivenessmission.com, or you can go to Eventbrite and look up Forgiveness Workshop, sponsored by the Forgiveness Mission. The workshops are absolutely free, but the information is priceless. So again, go to forgivenessmission.com in order to sign up for our free virtual workshop. That being said, Anu, I want to say once again, thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for sharing your story and your expertise with us. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. I just want to say I'm really grateful for this space and just for this amazing container that you hold. I think is absolutely phenomenal, and you're just great at it. And I just want to share, with your listeners, just to say that that you are where you need to be right now, and that you're all unique beings, and that you all have a special unique ability to be whoever you want to be, and that comparison is a thief of joy. Again, I don't know why I'm saying this. It's obviously going to resonate with somebody. And that do not compare yourself with anybody, because you're just unique and you're beautiful the way that you are. So just honor yourselves and just appreciate the journey that you're on, because the universe has your back.
Great. Could you leave us your social media handles where we can find you and follow you?
Yeah, so you'll find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, and it's literally Victim to Victor with a number 2, or you can just find me with my name, which is Anu Verma.
All right. And then we can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. So thank you guys once again for tuning in. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Tees. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.